My older brother Marcus measures success in stock tickers and the square footage of his downtown penthouse. I measure it in the tight swirling grain of black walnut and the perfect seamless fit of a dovetail joint. He lives and breathes in a world of gleaming glass towers, seven-figure bonuses and conversations about market volatility that sound to me like a foreign language. My world smells of sawdust wood varnish and the deep, satisfying peace of creating something real and tangible with my own two hands. To me, that is a language I understand completely. To my family, it has always been a source of quiet, polite disappointment. From the moment we were old enough to have ambitions, Marcus and I were set on different trajectories. He was the golden child, the one destined for an Ivy League school and a corner office. He collected accolades, debate team trophies, honor, roll certificates, scholarships with an effortless grace. I collected scraps of interesting wood and old worn-out tools. While he was studying for his SATs, I was learning how to read the soul of a piece of timber to see the table or the chair hidden within the raw material. To my parents, Marcus was not just a son. He was a success story, a walking, talking return on their investment. My chosen profession, custom carpentry, was viewed differently. It was a quaint hobby, a respectable trade for someone else's son perhaps, but a disappointment for their own. I remember the moment this difference was carved into my memory as sharply as one of my own chisels. I was 16 and had just spent 2 months painstakingly crafting an intricate chessboard out of bird's eye maple and rosewood. It was the most complex thing I had ever made, and I was immensely proud of it. The same afternoon I finished it, Marcus came home with his final report card of the year straight A's, with a glowing letter of recommendation from his calculus teacher, already secured for his college applications. That evening, my father called us into the living room. He held Marcus's report card in one hand, beaming. "This son," he announced, clapping Marcus on the back. "This is a ticket to anywhere you want to go in life. We're so proud of you." My mother was already talking about getting it professionally framed. Then my father turned to me. "What's that you've got there, Leo?" I brought the chessboard forward, my heart pounding with a nervous hope. He took it, glanced at it for a moment, and set it down on the coffee table. "Oh, that's very nice, Leo," he said, his attention already drifting back to Marcus. "It's good to have a hobby to keep you busy. Just make sure it doesn't distract you from your real studies, all right?" That was the moment I understood. In their eyes, his piece of paper covered in letters and numbers was real. It was valuable. It was the future. My creation, a thing of beauty and skill that I had poured my soul into, was just a distraction. That dynamic never changed. It only widened as we grew older. He climbed the corporate ladder, and I honed my craft. He lived in the sun, and I learned to find satisfaction in the shade. But every now and then, he would make a point of reminding me just how long and dark his shadow could be. Of course, here is part 2 of the story, continuing with Liam's journey. My family's script for my life was written in stone. I was to follow Julian to an Ivy League school, then pursue a respectable graduate degree in law or medicine. To keep the peace, I enrolled in the pre-law program at Columbia University. For 2 years, I tried to play the part. I sat in lecture halls the size of small theaters, highlighting passages in constitutional law textbooks until the pages glowed yellow. But the words were just black marks on a page. They held no life, no flavor. My mind was in the lecture hall, but my soul was somewhere else entirely. It was in the cramped kitchen of my dorm, experimenting with sauces. It was at the library, but instead of case law, I was devouring cookbooks by Escoffier and Julia Child, like they were sacred texts. I was living a lie, and the taste of it was turning to ash in my mouth. The breaking point came during a particularly dry lecture on tort law. The professor was droning on, and I found myself mentally deconstructing the coq au vin I had tried to make the night before, trying to figure out why the sauce hadn't achieved the right consistency. In that moment, the absurdity of my life hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was sitting in one of the most prestigious universities in the world, on a path to a 6-figure career, and all I could think about was the browning of a mirepoix. I stood up in the middle of the lecture, walked out, and went straight to the library. I didn't open a law book. I opened a web browser and began filling out an application for the Culinary Institute of America. Clicking submit on that application was the most terrifying and liberating thing I had ever done. The acceptance letter arrived during spring break. I held the thick envelope in my hands, my heart pounding. It was a key, a ticket to a world that was my own. I knew what telling my family would mean. It would mean a war. But the thought of going back to Colombia, back to that slow academic death, was even more terrifying. I made the announcement that night at the dinner table, the family's traditional battleground. Julian was discussing a complex new surgical procedure, and my mother was listening with rapt attention. I waited for a pause, took a deep breath, and laid my future on the table. "Mom, Julian, I have something to tell you," I said. The table fell silent. "I've been accepted to the Culinary Institute. I'm not going back to Colombia next semester. I'm going to be a chef." The silence that followed was heavy and cold. My mother slowly placed her fork down her face, a mask of disbelief that quickly hardened into disappointment. "A chef?" She said, the word tasting like poison in her mouth. Her voice was quiet, but it cut deeper than any shout. "Liam, we sent you to Colombia to use your mind, not your hands. Cooking is a trade. It's what people do when they have no other options." "You have options. You are advanced." Julian scoffed. "Are you serious, Liam? You're throwing away an Ivy League education to go flip burgers." "That's embarrassing. It's not flipping burgers," I argued, my voice shaking slightly. "It's my passion. It's what I love." "Passion doesn't build a respectable life," my mother stated flatly. Her expression was now closed, her judgment final. "This is not a discussion. It is a foolish adolescent fantasy. If you choose to walk away from the path we have provided for you, then you will do so on your own. We will not support this whim." The ultimatum hung in the air. My education, my future, my family's approval, or a life in the kitchen. In their eyes, it wasn't a choice at all. But for me, for the first time in my life, the choice was clear. "I know," I said quietly, and with that, I had chosen my path. The price was my family, but the prize was my own soul. Of course. Here is part 3 of the story, continuing with Maya's decision to attend the party. For a full hour, after Chloe's call, I just sat there, staring at the login screen for Ethelgard. My first instinct was to say no, to text back a polite excuse about a work deadline, a deadline only, I would know was real. It would be easy to retreat into the world where I was respected, where my name, or at least my pseudonym, carried weight. Instead, I logged into the private developer server chat. This was my real office, my real community. My team, a scattered group of brilliant misfits from around the world, knew me only as Astra. They knew my mind, my work ethic, my vision. They had no idea what my sister did for a living. I typed out a message into the main channel. "Okay team, I need advice on a social stealth quest I've just been assigned. Primary objective, attend a dinner party hosted by my sister. The real success story. Secondary objective, impress a tech billionaire she's trying to land as a client. Debuff. I have been instructed not to talk about elves or dragons and to act normal. Thoughts?" The response was immediate. Kael, our lead combat designer in Finland, sent a string of laughing emojis. Wait, hold on. The architect of the Whispering Peaks expansion has to pretend she's normal for her real estate sister. This is priceless. Lyra, my head writer based in Scotland, chimed in. Treat it like an infiltration mission. Astra. Your cover is Unemployed Little Sister. Your mission is to observe the local customs, gather intel on the target, this billionaire, and extract yourself with your sanity intact. Bonus points, if you can make her talk of closing costs and property taxes sound incredibly boring. Their reactions, their complete and utter amusement at the absurdity of my real-life predicament, felt like a shield. They saw the situation for what it was, a ridiculous play. They weren't seeing me through the lens of family history and disappointment. They saw me as Astra, the capable and revered leader of their world. Their perspective gave me the distance I needed. I typed back, "Okay, quest accepted. Wish me luck." They were right. This wasn't a family obligation to be dreaded. It was a quest. A bizarre, high-stakes role-playing game in the real world. My objective was clear. I wasn't going there to seek their approval or to try and change their minds. I was going as an observer, an anthropologist studying a strange and foreign tribe. With this new mindset, preparing for the party felt different. It wasn't about trying to impress them. It was about choosing my armor. I went through my closet, bypassing anything that looked like I was trying too hard. Chloe would be in something bright, sharp, and expensive, a dress designed to be a statement. I chose the opposite. I picked a simple, perfectly cut black dress, made of a heavy silk that didn't wrinkle. It was understated elegant and almost severe in its simplicity. It wasn't a dress designed to compete with Chloe's fireworks. It was a dress designed to absorb light, to be a quiet, unshakable presence. I did my makeup minimally, pulled my hair back into a sleek bun, and looked at my reflection. I didn't see the disappointing little sister. I saw a character I was about to play equipped for her mission. I was logging in, of course. Here is part 4 of the story, continuing with Liam's journey. 2 years passed. I became a sous chef at Le Chêne, Chef Antoine's trusted second-in-command. I moved in with Chloe, our small apartment, filled with the smell of old books and good wine. My life was my own, built on hard work and a passion my family refused to acknowledge. The call came on a Tuesday. It was my mother. "Liam, I have wonderful news," she announced, her voice filled with a rare, genuine excitement. "Your brother has been awarded the Kellerman Grant for his research in neuroplasticity. The university is holding a formal gala to honor him in 3 weeks. She paused. "We would like you to be there." The invitation felt like an olive branch, and despite my better judgment, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe things had changed. Maybe they were finally ready to see me as part of the family again. I told Chloe I had to go. "I want to be there for Julian," I explained. "It's a huge achievement." She understood even as she looked at me with worried eyes. I requested the night off, something almost unheard of for a sous chef, and to my surprise, Chef Antoine granted it. "Go," he said. "Family is family, even when they are fools." The night of the gala, my family gathered for a pre-event dinner at a stuffy Michelin-starred restaurant near the university, my mother's choice. The conversation was entirely about Julian's genius, his brilliant future, the importance of his work. I congratulated my brother sincerely, and he gave me a distracted, condescending smile. "Thanks, Liam. It's hard to explain the complexities, but it's a big deal." As the meal progressed, my mother turned to me, her fork resting on her plate. "Liam, darling," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "At the gala tonight, you'll be meeting many of my colleagues from the university. The dean, the provost. When they ask what you do, perhaps it would be better to just say, 'You're in hospitality.' It sounds a bit more polished than cook." The word hung in the air, a familiar insult dressed up in a velvet glove. "Mum, I'm a sous chef at one of the best restaurants in the city," I said, my voice quiet. "Yes, of course, dear," she replied, patting my hand. "And we're very proud of your hard work. It's just for tonight, to simplify things." Julian nodded in agreement. "She's right, Liam. It just makes the conversation easier. No need to get into the whole restaurant business." I felt that old familiar shame wash over me, the feeling of being something to be managed, a problem to be solved. As we were preparing to leave for the main event, my mother pulled me aside near the coat check. Her smile was gone, replaced by a cool, appraising look. "Liam, I've been thinking," she said, her voice firm. "On second thought, perhaps it's best you don't attend the ceremony itself." I stared at her confused. "What? Why?" "This is a very important night for Julian," she explained, her gaze unflinching. "It's an academic event for professionals, for doctors and academics who understand the significance of this award. Your presence. Well, it would just be confusing for our colleagues. It would raise questions we don't need to answer tonight. It's better this way." There it was. The final, unequivocal rejection. I was not just a disappointment. I was an embarrassment, a confusing data point that would disrupt the pristine narrative of her perfect academic family. She was disowning me from their public life. I looked at my mother, at the woman who had taught me to read, and for the first time I didn't see my mom. I saw a stranger, a woman so blinded by her own narrow definition of success that she was willing to shatter her own son's heart to protect her image. The hope I had foolishly allowed to flicker inside me died completely. There was nothing left to fight for. "I understand," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. I didn't wait for her reply. I turned, walked out of the restaurant, and didn't look back. I left them to their world of accolades and prestige. I didn't go home. I went back to the only place that felt like home anymore, the kitchen. I walked into the heat and the chaos of Le Chêne, changed into my chef's whites, and got to work, the familiar weight of a knife in my hand, a more profound comfort than my own family had ever been. The battle was finally over. I had lost. But as I seared a piece of fish in a screaming hot pan, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had also been set free. Of course. Here is part 5 of the story covering the dinner table scene. Dinner was an elaborate multi-course affair. I was seated between my father and the wife of one of Chloe's colleagues, a woman whose name I immediately forgot. The conversation flowed around me, a river of talk about interest rates, vacation homes in Aspen, and the merits of a particular private school. I remained in my role as observer, eating my food silently, a ghost at the feast. My parents, seated near the head of the table, directed all their questions to Chloe, their pride in her radiating with almost physical warmth. They were in their element, their daughter holding court with a billionaire at the table as the ultimate validation of their family's success. The moment I had been dreading arrived with the dessert course. The woman beside me, perhaps trying to be polite after an hour of ignoring me, turned with a bright, curious smile. "We've heard so much about Chloe's incredible career," she said. "Maya, what about you? What field are you in?" The question, though innocent, made the table fall quiet for a beat. All eyes turned to me. I felt a familiar heat creep up my neck. I opened my mouth to deliver my vague, safe line about being a freelance digital artist. But before I could speak, Chloe let out a loud theatrical laugh that drew every last bit of attention in the room. "Oh, you don't have to be so modest, Maya." "Tell them," she said, her tone dripping with condescending encouragement. She leaned forward, a conspiratorial smirk on her face. She was enjoying this. She was going to answer for me. "My sister is one of the most dedicated people I know." Chloe began, her voice full of false admiration. "She spends 12, sometimes 14 hours a day focused on her work. She's actually one of the top-ranked players in the world." She paused, letting the statement hang in the air before delivering the punchline, at her favorite video game. "She's practically a professional." A few of Chloe's sycophantic friends tittered. My mother's smile became a tight, pained line. My father cleared his throat and took a sudden deep interest in his tiramisu. Chloe, however, was just warming up. It's true, she insisted, as if I were a fascinating science experiment. While I'm out here in the real world, navigating the complexities of the multi-million-dollar luxury real estate market, my little sister is at home slaying digital dragons. It's a different kind of market, I suppose. She looked around the table, her eyes sparkling with malice. But hey, every family needs one, right? The creative one, the dreamer. The way she said dreamer made it sound synonymous with loser. It was a public execution delivered with a smile. She had taken my life, my passion, the world I had poured my heart and soul into, and reduced it to a childish caricature for the amusement of her wealthy friends. I felt my cheeks burning, a humiliation so profound it left me breathless. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, to be anywhere but there, pinned by the pitying and amused glances of a dozen strangers. Chloe, having landed her final blow smoothly, changed the subject back to a recent property sale, leaving me to sit in the crater she had just created. I stared down at my plate, my dessert untouched. But as I risked a glance up, I saw one person at the table who wasn't smiling or looking away in embarrassment. It was Damien Vance. He was looking directly at me, not with pity, but with a sharp, focused curiosity, an expression I had never seen before. It was the look of a man who had just been given a very interesting, unexpected piece of data. Of course, here is part 6 of the story, the pivotal moment of vindication. Chloe, basking in the glow of her successful put-down, gracefully steered the conversation back to business, leaving me to sit in the echoing silence of my own humiliation. My father gave her a subtle, approving nod. My mother looked relieved that the awkward moment was over. I picked up my water glass, my hand trembling slightly, and tried to disappear. But the silence was broken by an unexpected voice. "I'm sorry," said Damien Vance, his tone quiet, but carrying an authority that immediately cut through Chloe's monologue about zoning permits. He wasn't looking at Chloe. He was looking directly at me. "You said something about slaying digital dragons." Chloe's smile faltered. She shot me a warning look. "Oh, it's nothing, Mr. Vance. Just a silly hobby." Mr. Vance ignored her completely, his gaze still fixed on me. "What game?" he asked again, a genuine curiosity in his eyes. Trapped, I felt my voice come out as a whisper. It's a game called Ethelgard." The change in Damien Vance's demeanor was instantaneous and absolute. The bored, reserved billionaire vanished, replaced by an excited, engaged fan. His eyes widened, and he leaned forward, placing his elbows on the table. "Ethelgard," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You're kidding me. I have logged over 1,000 hours in Ethelgard. My God, the world building is extraordinary. The narrative design, the economic balancing, the lore. It's a masterpiece. The lead designer, the one they call Astra, is an absolute genius. He shook his head in admiration. My venture capital firm tried to acquire the development studio last year for 9 figures, but she or he, no one knows, wouldn't sell. She's notoriously private. My sister's face had gone completely pale. My parents were staring utterly bewildered. Mr. Vance continued, a thought dawning on his face as he looked at me. He noted my quietness throughout the dinner, my sister's condescending description of my creative life, my one-word answer. The pieces clicked into place behind his keen, analytical eyes. The subtle narrative threads, the way the world feels so lived in and real. He said, his voice dropping slightly with dawning realization. You're not just a player, are you? He stared at me, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. My God, you're Astra, aren't you? The entire table went silent. Every eye was on me. Chloe looked like she had seen a ghost. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a dizzying sense of my two worlds about to collide. I took a deep breath, and for the first time that night, I met my sister's shocked gaze and I didn't flinch. I turned back to Mr. Vance and gave a small, steady nod. Yes, I said, my voice clear. That's me. Damien Vance threw his head back and let out a genuine booming laugh of pure delight. He pushed his chair back, stood up, and extended his hand across the table to me, ignoring everyone else. It is an absolute, unmitigated honor to meet you, he said, his voice ringing with respect. He shook my hand firmly. The world you built has given me more joy and intellectual stimulation than any multi-million-dollar house I have ever lived in. He then let go of my hand and turned to my stunned sister, his expression all business once more. Chloe, thank you for a lovely dinner, but I'm afraid my interest in the lakeside estate has waned. My investment priorities have just shifted. He turned his warm, respectful gaze back to me. Miss Thompson, Astra, I don't want to buy your game. I want to invest in whatever you build next. My office will call you tomorrow. Name your price.